Hello and welcome to Golden Studios. Today we'll be making a bow and arrow. You can pick up the arrows and it'll have a chance of adding it to your inventory, or it will just destroy it. You can also come over here and then get some arrows out of the barrel. If you want a more in-depth video, I'll link a description to the video that I learned everything from. He has a full course on it, so there's a lot more to learn from this and a lot more you can improve upon. So go ahead and check that out if you are interested in going further with this. So the first thing we want to do is go to Blueprints, Player Info, and then I want to add a variable and call it arrows, and then make that an integer. Close that out. Next, you want to download the Lego tutorial folder, and once you open that up, you want to go to Blueprints, then Archery, and then I'm going to right click on any of these, Show and Explorer, and select it, drag it off, and then click the Archery, and then just drag it in. Then go out of that, and go to Characters, and create a new folder. I'm going to call this Archer, and then I'll drag the Eragon into there. So close those out, go to Assets, right click, Import, and go to the Lego tutorial folder, go to Assets, and select the Archery target, the arrow holder, and just select all of this, and then click Open. Next, select everything except for the bow animation and the bow rig, and then we'll just import that. Next, right click again, and import the bow rig, import again, and then we're going to import the bow animation. Make sure that the bow rig is selected, and then import. You can open that up, and you can see it plays an animation. We want to go to Content, go to Characters, Archer, and we just want to add some animations. So next you want to go to Mixamo, upload character, and I'm going to open up the Lego tutorial, and in the Lego guy, I'm going to go back to Mixamo, Lego guy, and then drop in the folder that says drop in Mixamo. So once you import that, we want to find the correct animations. So we're going to type in Archery, and the ones that we want, we're going to start with idle, and we want the standing aim idle, so we'll download that. Without skin, we want Archery walk. I'm going to do a standing aim walk right, standing aim walk back, standing aim walk left, and standing aim walk forward. And then also want standing draw arrow. And then I'm also going to get some running, so the running forward, run left, run right, and run back. And then that should be everything. So coming back over here, I'm going to go to Lego guy animations, and I'm going to create a new folder, call it Archery, open that up, import, and then go to where you saved your animations, select them all, open, and make sure the Lego mesh skeleton is selected, import all, and if you open it up, it should be working just fine. So the next thing we want to do is select the Lego AnimBP, paste that, and then F2 to rename, and I'm going to call this Lego Archery AnimBP. So let's open that up. It's going to be basically the same. We're just going to add one more thing to the bottom, and we want to drag off the character, get base aim rotation, and then I want to drag off, promote to variable, and just call this base aim rotation. And then we're just going to plug that in. Next we want to get the velocity, and then make rotation from X, and then I want to get the base aim rotation, and then delta, and plug that in, and I want to break the rotator, and then I want to drag off the yaw, promote to variable, and then call this yaw offset, and then we'll just plug that in. And then we'll use this stuff later, and I'll just select all of this, comment, and call this calculate offset. Next thing we want to do, I'm going to drag this off here. I'll come back to it later. Next, we want to right click, go to animation, and then click blend space. We're going to select the Lego mesh, and then call this Lego Archery BS. And then open that up, and we'll rename this yaw offset. We'll make this -180 and 180. And down here, we'll call this speed, and I'll make the max 1000. And for the smoothing time, I'll just make it like 0.5 or something. And then also take snap to grid. Next we want to get the aim idle. It'll be standing aim idle. And then we'll get the standing aim walk forward, the standing aim left, and the walk right. So now walks left, right, left, forward, and then we want to get the back, and we'll want to put the walking back on either side. And I want to put the standing one back over here. And actually I want to delete this idle and then move the walk down here. And then I want to put the run forward up here, the run left, and the run right. So it should look like this. So save that, go to Lego Archery BP, then we'll come over here, open the animation graph, and then I'll open up locomotion, idle, and then I want to find the correct idle, the standing aim idle, and then I'll just drop it in there. And the walk and run, I want the Lego Archery, and then I'll plug that in, untick that, and then plug the speed in, and then I want to plug this yaw offset into here. So compile. So next we need to go characters, archer, and open that up, and we're going to get this character all set up. And let's just rename this to BP Archer. And the first thing we need to do is get the correct character in here. And to get our character, we want to go to Lego guy, and then we want to get the Lego skeleton mesh. And we're going to get characters, archer, paste that in, and then we'll name that to Archer. If you open that up, we can give it some textures. Alright, so I can just exit out of this, and then back in the BP Archer, we can now select the Archer. And then for anim class, we'll want to choose the Lego Archery anim BP. Alright, and then once you do that, if it's standing still, you want to make sure you compile the anim BP, and then it should start working, and you can see that looks good. Next, we're going to come fix some of these issues. So we're going to go into the event graph, and we don't need the block. I'm just going to delete that. And in sprint, we need to change some stuff over here. So first, we're going to start with the player info. Right here in the event begin play, we just need to type in player info, and then we need to select this, type in player info, and then select object reference, change variable type, and hold alt and click. Next, we'll drag off of here and cast to Lego Archery, and unplug that, and click on this one, and then type in Lego Archery and BP, and object reference, click the X, compile, so that stuff is good. Moving down, we need to create a new HUD. We're going to go to content, UI, and then the HUD, I'm going to copy and paste that, and I'm going to call it HUD Archery, and then open that up, go to level, HUD assets, and then we're going to import some assets. So go to the HUD in the Lego tutorial folder and select the crosshair and the quiver, and open that up. And then in the crosshair, you want to select that, and then drag it into the HUD Archery, and then we're going to anchor it to the middle, and set the size to like 150 or something, and set all of these to 0, and then drag it into the middle. So once that's done, you can compile, and then head out of that, and then in here, we want to type in HUD, and do the archery one, and we want to click on the HUD ref, and then type in HUD Archery, and then object reference, close out of that, and plug it in, and then compile. Next, we have the bow reference. We need to create that as well. So we're going to go to content, and in weapons, we want to right click, blueprint, actor, and I'm going to call this BP bow. Open that up, and then we want to get skeletal mesh, and for that, we want to get the bow rig, and I'm going to click search, and I'm just going to add a quick material. That looks good. And we'll close out of that, compile, save, and this is everything we need for right now. Close out of this, and then we want to get the BP bow, and then click on this, type in BP bow, object reference, change variable, and then you compile, and then that's all set up. On the is hit, I'll drag off of this and get dead, plug that in, and then we'll copy and paste this because there's a lot of these. Down here on jump, we're going to delete that, and then paste, and we can delete that, and just copy that again, and then we'll delete that, plug it in, and then down here for sprint, we'll delete that, and then paste, and then dead, and I'll just get rid of the slash, and we can delete this, and then that's looking good. Then out of this one, we want to get dead, plug that in, and then we want to get arrows, and we want to get arrows for this one as well, and then we also want to set arrows. And then right here, I'll just come up here, and I'll copy this, and then I'll just paste it into here. And over here, to make an arrow, I'm going to go to content, weapons, and then I'm going to create a blueprint, actor, I call this BP, arrow, and then I'll add a static mesh and a box. And in the static mesh, I want to get the arrow, and I'll browse to that and just add some quick materials. And I'll just close out of that, and I want the tail to be near the origin. Then for the box, I'm going to scale this down, and this is the spot that is going to stick to. So if anything hits this box, it'll stop, and then it'll stick. So it's going to be a little bit before the arrowhead. And then in Archer, I want to get the arrow, and I want to do BP arrow. So compile, and that should work. And then in the bow ref, we're going to need to create a event. So in weapons, bow, I'm going to delete this, and I'm going to create a custom event. I'm going to call this fire bow. And in here, I want to go to the viewport, select the skeletal mesh, and in animation mode, I'm going to use animation asset, and then select the bow animation, and untick all of these. And in event graph, you want to drag off the skeletal mesh, and then play animation, and then select the bow animation. And back in BP Archer, I want to drag off and get fire bow. I'm going to delete this one and then plug it in. And then down here, you want to get actor of class from BP arrow, then compile. And in the BP arrow, I want to delete all of this stuff and create a variable, call it impact point, and make it a vector. And then in Archer, you want to drag off and set impact point, and then we'll just drag that into there, drag that, and then compile, and that's all for that. So what we're doing is when we press fire, which is the attack button, the left mouse button, we check if they're dead. If they're not, then we're going to check if they have enough arrows. If they have 0 or less arrows, then we're not going to do anything. So for false, we want to check can fire, and by default it's checked as true because you can always fire unless you don't have enough arrows. But once we fire, we will set it to cannot fire because we don't want to do rapid fire unless you want to have like a machine gun. Next we want to set the arrows, and we want to -1, and then we want to get actor of class from the bow, check if they're falling, make sure that the bow is in the hand, and then we have several different things that are going on. So the first one, we are setting up a line trace. So this is taking the view from the crosshair in the widget, and then this is creating the points for the line trace. The second one is the actual line trace, which is where we use those variables, and off of that we want to get the blocking hit, and we set the impact point. However, if we don't hit something, we don't want to set the impact point to something up in the air because it doesn't hit anything. Next we want to set the arrow spawn location, and down here is where the arrow will spawn. We'll need to set that. We'll go to characters, Archer skeletal mesh, and I'm just going to click the Lego skeletal mesh. I'm going to hold on these and then press delete just to get rid of the previews. And I want to get the left hand and then add socket. I'm going to call this arrow. I'm also going to add another one and call it bow hand. And I'm going to come up here to preview controller, use specific animation, and then I'm going to use the standing idle and just pause that. And then bow hand, I'm going to add preview asset, call it bow, and then I just need to scale this down and rotate it. So once that's set up, I'm going to go to the arrow, add preview, and then arrow, and then I need to scale that down as well. Alright, and you want to make sure the origin is up here because the origin is now back here for the arrow. So back in BP Archer, in the event begin play, you want to make sure that the socket name is the same. I called it arrow in here, and it's arrow in here. And then we're setting the location for that. And then this sets the impact point and also the arrow spawn rotation. Next, moving down here, we want to spawn the arrow. So we have the BP arrow, we're spawning it, and the location is the location and rotations that we made up here. So it'll be spawning at the end of the arrow. And then down here, we want to play the bow animation from inside the bow blueprint, and then we want to play a montage which we need to set up. So go to content, characters, Lego guy, animation, archery, and we want to get the shooting, which is the standing draw arrow. So I'm going to click on that, create dynamic montage, and then select that, and then click the arrow, and after that we set a can fire because we finished everything we fired, and now we can fire again. And then also we want to get the actor of class BP arrow, and we're setting the impact point inside of the arrow, and this is so we can play a sound where the arrow hits, and I'm doing a play sound by location, so it's a little more realistic. So you hear it further away you shoot and it hits the ground, the quieter the sound will get. So next in level 1, we want to go to world settings, and BP character, we want to change that to BP archer, and we want to go to content, weapons, and then bow, and we want to drag that into the BP archer viewport and drag it onto the mesh. Compile, and you can see there's still some issues, so we're going to go to the bow on hand and fix some of this. I'm going to go to the event graph and then come over here, copy, and then I'll paste this in, and I'll open up the bow in hand and do the same thing. And you can delete that, and back in bow and back, compile, and control, and drag onto the bow ref, and then click on the bow and make sure it's set to BP bow. And also make sure that the bow back, and then up here, you want to plug in the target as bow ref, and then the bow back, I'm going to copy that, go back to the Lego skeleton, and I'm going to go to spine 4, and add socket, I'm going to do F2, control, and do control V. Next, I'm going to do preview asset, bow rig, and this needs to be a lot smaller. Alright, that looks good. Next, we'll go back to the bow in hand, and control, click, and then drag it into there. And all of this stuff is set up, we just need to drag this in, and compile, and then we just need to fix up here, and I'm going to drag off of here, get health, and then I want to get AI slashing, plug that in. Then I want to set the health, and then control click, and just drag all of these into the new pins. Alright, so now that's set up. We'll just fix this real quick, and then in the death, we'll get dead, plug that in, and then I want to set dead, and set that to true, and then off of here, I want to set dead. And add the death sound, and in here, we just need to set the health. Alright, so that's finished, and I'm just going to get rid of this camera zoom, we don't really need that. Then in the BP arrow, we want to come down and set no collision. In the BP bow, we also want to set no collision. That's already set, so that's good. And then we just want the interact button. I'm going to get rid of that part. And then we want to come over here and type in interact and get interact message. And then plug that in, control, and I'll just hold alt and untick that for now. And in level 1, third person, input, and then I'll go into IMC default, interact, I want to change that to F, then I'll come up here, interact, and then enhanced action events, drag that into there, and now we don't have any issues. And if we walk around and jump and run, you can see that everything's working well. We push shift, we run, we can walk. The only problem is that no arrows are firing. And I'm going to go into player info, set the arrows to 10, and now you can see that some arrows are firing. However, they're facing the wrong direction. Also, the bow looks a little weird, so I'm going to change that. And then I'm also going to go to the BP arrow, click add, and then type in projectile. And in the initial speed, I'm just going to make it 500. We'll make it much higher later. This is just to test which direction it's facing in. So if I push play, I can see it's facing in the right direction. The arrow is just sideways. So that means I just need to go into the BP arrow and then switch that around. If it was firing the wrong direction, such as to the left or right or something like that, then you would want to go to the Lego mesh, and then the arrow, and then you would change the direction that that's facing. So now if I click play, it's facing the wrong direction, so I'm going to switch that around again, and now that's looking a lot better. So I'm going to turn the speed up a little bit, I'm going to say like 15, and I'll turn it up even more. So the next thing to do to make it stick into things, I'm going to select the floor and then select generate overlap events. And then in the BP arrow, we're going to go to the event graph and we'll select the box, and down here on component begin overlap and on other actor we want to get a not equal, and then we'll just type in self because we don't want it to affect it itself, and then we'll hold down B for branch, plug that in, and we want to drag off the projectile movement and then stop movement immediately. And then we also want to set the gravity scale so it just stops. And now you can see it just sticks in the ground wherever I shoot. And there's a step further we can go with this. I'm going to drag in a cube and I'll make this simulate physics. And if I generate overlap events and I shoot it, you can see it's sticking. However, if I move it, you can see it's not really sticking in there. They were just stopped. So back in the bow, or the arrow, we want to attach actor to actor. and the parent will do other actor, and I'll just move this up, and I'll change this to keep world and make sure weld simulated bodies is ticked. And then I want to get the box and set collision enabled and make sure it has no collision. And then I want to get event begin play, hold down D and add 10 seconds and then plug that in. And then I want to create a variable and call it collision, and I'll set that to be a boolean. So then I'll set that and set it to be true. And by default, it'll be set as false. And then I want to do once, and then get the impact point, and play sound at location. And for the sound, I'm going to go to content, and then sound, SFX. I'm going to right click, import, and then I'll go to the SFX, and I want the arrow pickup, draw, and fire. And for the arrow hit, I'm going to create a queue, and then open that up, and override attenuation, and just tick all of these. Next, I want to go back to the arrow and then select arrow hit Q. And back in the queue, I'm going to change it to natural sound. So now when you play it, the closer it gets, the louder it gets. And you can play with these more to change it how you'd like, but I'm happy with that. And then one more thing with the arrow, we're going to add another box collision, and for this one we're going to scale it to be the size of the arrow. And on component begin overlap, I'm going to copy up here and paste that and plug that into other actor, and then I'm going to hold down B for a branch, and then plug in collision, and off of true I'm going to get a boolean, and I'm going to get a random bool, and off of true I'm going to get actor of class, and then do player info, and off of player info I'm going to get arrows and set arrows, and I'm going to add 1, and then I'll play a sound and then destroy actor, and off of false I'm just going to destroy actor. And at play sound we're going to do arrow pickup. Then on BP self arrow I'm going to do lifespan and give it like 10 seconds or something. So now if I play and I shoot some arrows, I'll have a random chance of picking it up. Next I'm going to go to the content, UI, and UI archery, and I'm going to copy a loot and paste it onto the canvas, and I'm going to anchor it in the top right corner. For the image, I'm going to type in quiver, and for the number I'm going to bind it and get the player info, and then I'll get arrows, and I'll just plug that in. So now if I play, you can see I have 10, and every time I fire it goes down, and I can fix them up, and then that increases my arrow count. And make sure if you want an arrow to stick in an object, you have to drag it in and then just type in over and generate overlap events, and then it'll be able to stick inside. So that's all for shooting arrows. I'm just going to go over the arrow pickup real quick. So I'm going to drag in the arrow holder, and then I'll go to assets, get the arrow holder, and actually need to open up the blueprint. So I'm going to open that up and then click on cylinder, and then we'll change that to static mesh, and we'll change it to that. I'm just going to drag that back in, and in here you'll see there's an overlap. I'm going to get rid of this and click on the sphere, and I want to get on component begin overlap, and I also want component end overlap, and I'll just drag these up here and then plug those in right there. And next I just want to come over here, and then off of player info I want to get arrow. I actually need to set it, otherwise it won't work. I need player info, and then I'll come up here, type in player info, and then get the object reference, and then we can plug that in. And off of player info I want to get arrows, then I want to set arrows, and clicking on the arrow down here I'm just going to delete all of this, and in the viewport I'm going to click on widget, and then we need to add a widget, so go to content, UI, and click on any of these, show and explore, and then you want to open up the Lego tutorial, and there'll be something called a UE asset, and then close all that and open that up, and it's just a simple little thing that says loot, and then come down here to widget class, call it E, and if I click play, you can see there it is. If I walk up to it, it says F. It doesn't do anything right now, so we're just going to set up I'm going to delete this arrows blueprint and go to content, blueprints, and there's the arrows, and there's all this code, and I want to get the viewport, and I'm going to drag the arrows into the arrow holder, and in the arrow holder, we're going to get rid of event interact, and we want to get interact. And now if you walk up to it and you click F, you can see up in the corner, now I have 20 arrows, and I'm going to open up the arrow play, go to static mesh, then open up the arrow, and now if you click play, you should see that some arrows are now spawning inside. I'm going to go to the arrow holder, go to arrows, and move that up a little bit, and there you go, and you can see arrows are spawning inside, and about every half second it gets a new arrow. I couldn't figure out how to get rid of these arrows, so this one's a little broken, but it still has a good amount of functionality to it. I can get arrows, I can shoot it, I can even shoot that, and I'm going to come up to the BP Archer and copy this. I'm going to do Control X to cut it, and I'm going to put this before, just to cause less bug issues. Alright, and that's all for today's tutorial. To sum up, we can move around, there's a crosshair, we have all the animations put in. Wherever you aim, there is a line trace, so it'll go to exactly where you're aiming. You can pick up the arrow and possibly get an arrow back. Arrows will stick into anything. There's also a sound that plays a sound at location, and we have an arrow holder that we can get arrows from and continue to shoot. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.